Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Invitation to a Conversation. My name is Pamela Bailey, and this interview is a post-trial to the Ahmaud Arbery case. And I have with me this evening, Miss Theawanza Brooks. Good evening, Theawanza. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. This conversation tonight is just about the beginning of picking the jury up into the final convictions of those three men. So my first question is, when you heard that it was 11 whites and one African American on the jury, what was your first reaction?
At first, I was a little disturbed about the jury selection, but after a while, I came to the conclusion after reading the summary of each person that was on the jury, of their representation to Glenn County, and how they were orchestrated in this community. I knew that we were going to be okay, and I knew that because on that jury there were 9 mothers, and the jury was not a sequestered jury, so they had an opportunity to go home every night and be with their loved ones. So I'm sure that in the afternoons when they sat with their children or their grandchildren, being on that jury, they had a lot of time to think
Mm.
at home, as if things of questions like, well, what if this was little Johnny? Um, would I want to be sitting in Miss Cooper's or Mr. Marcus's seat? How would I feel if this was Maggie here at dinner and she's not here with us anymore to fill this seat? So I'm sure that those type of things and questions played on their mind daily after they left. So I really wasn't concerned after I read up on the jury and who the members were of the jury.
Do you think that was a strategic plan to have them not be sequestered and to go home and to get those feelings like you just described?
I'm not sure if it was actually the plan of the defense, because as we all saw, their motive was to get rid of as many African Americans with their peremptory strikes as they could. And they left one on there so that we could feel like this wasn't a situation where it was based off race, or they did it as a reason to be biased toward African Americans in this situation. So honestly, I felt like it was strategic to get rid of most of the blacks on the end of the defense, but I don't really think they thought it out, because I think that if they would have, they probably would have requested them to be sequestered.
And that was one of the things that I was concerned about when I heard that it was 11 whites and one black. I was wondering how many were men, how many were women, how many were men. And when they called out juror number 12
Stop them from making noise.
and said she, then that gave me a clue that there were some women on there. And I did wonder after that if they were mothers or grandmothers. What going in after that? So you said you read the summary of the jury people that were there.
Yes, there was a summary that came out through the news of certain questions that were asked to determine this jury and who they were, if they had children, because a lot of the questions too were like, would there be something that would hinder you from being on this jury as far as child care and certain different things. So a lot of them, had talked about their children being older, or, it not being an issue because they had someone that would be able to pick up their children from daycare. So it wasn't an issue. So we learned different things about each juror individually through the process of deliberations.
Oh, that was good. And I know one of the questions that was asked of the jury panel was, did everybody get this particular question? If we use the word, if you heard white people use the N word, would you think they were racist? Was that given to all the juries or just certain ones?
No, that actually was a question that was on the actual list of questions that they read each day to each and every panel. So
Hmm.
that was a question for everybody.
Wow. Okay. And so let's go into the first day of the trial. As you know, and I want to thank you for being there every day and being an advocate. You taught everybody what an advocate is, and I think now you found one of your purpose. And
Yes, ma'am.
so, what was the first day like?
Well, the first day of the trial was opening arguments. So you got to hear, of course, the prosecution open up with the reason for us being here. And of course, you heard her say driveway decisions and assumptions was our reason for being there. And of course, she gave her opening arguments, and that's how we started off.
Mhm. And so, so everything was calm then. So it was like not, it didn't get, so one of the things that really had defense attorney Goff really perturbed was the banner of transformative justice, of that banner of John Lewis that said good trouble. Why did you think that disturbed him so bad?
I don't think it was really the banner that disturbed him. I think it was the message behind
Mm-hmm,
the banner that disturbed him because the people showed up because it was necessary,
mm-hmm,
and they were out there to do what we call give attention to the case, be eyes to watch what was going on. And that's a part of good trouble because they're not doing anything violent, but they're doing something for a good cause. And I think it was just the message behind it that deterred him the most. And I think that he felt that with that banner being out there, that it would draw more African Americans to the grounds, which to him, for some reason, we were some type of intimidation.
mm-hmm. Do you think that he thought that y'all were going to riot or be violent or anything? And I'm so proud that we, as a small town, was one of the one city in America that had to protest as many and as long as we did, and none of that did happen. So, do you think he was suspecting that would happen in order to get a mistrial?
Um, in his mind, I can't really say what he was thinking. I can say the things that came out of his mouth.
Mhm,
Um, and he was begging for a mistrial because of behaviors that he created.
mhm,
But as far as in the initial beginning, there was no reason for him to think that because, as you just stated, everything that we've done has been in decency and in order. There was no rioting. We didn't tear up anything. Even when the video came out on May 5th, which would have prompted people to want to promote violence because of
mhm,
what we saw and how Ahmaud was killed. You know, that was not just a day of people being sad. People were angry
mhm.
because this type of stuff was still taking place in the 20th century. So if none of those things came to pass when the opportunity permitted itself, why would we wait so late in the game with all the work that we've done to get here to now mess up what we started, which was something that started peacefully?
And once again, one of my favorite sayings is when they see us, when they see us, they always see us, not all of them, see us in the negative eye and not a person of human being with decency and class and poise. There was many derogative things being said in the trial. Which one of many do you think it was the straw that broke the camel's back for you?
Well, there were, like you said, so many.
Mhm,
I think there were two that really stood out to me the most. That was the one that Kevin Goff made in reference to not just saying not wanting anyone in the gallery with the family, just attorneys, but the specifics that he put on the word. And he stated not just no pastors. We don't want any pastors
mhm,
in here.
mhm.
He specifically aimed at Black pastors.
Mhm,
Um, that to me, which was very strategic because he was looking for a response
mhm,
so that he could come into the courtroom as he did and ask for a mistrial.
mhm,
Um, and then the last day of closing arguments for the defense,
mhm,
Laura Hogue,
mhm.
um,
Yes.
very, very distasteful, degrading, no kind of compassion for humanity. The fact that his mother and his father were in that courtroom, the fact that that's their child that was killed, and to say that Ahmaud was in a neighborhood wearing a white t-shirt, khaki shorts, white tennis shoes with no socks to cover his long, dirty toenails.
Mhm.
Now, at what point did we start degrading someone because of how they looked on their final day? And so I really found that very distasteful. It was so bad to where his mother got up and walked out of the courtroom because she said that she could not sit in there from the way she was talking about her son.
Mhm.
And anybody with any decency, I don't care who you're representing and what your motive is. And I'm sure you have a job to do, and I get it. There is a job to do because you're being paid to defend these defendants. I get it. But what I don't get is that you have to hit so low below the belt to where you don't care about the compassion of others. And that really did something to me that day.
And most cases that we watch where African American was killed by the hands of somebody else or police officer, they always do try to pit us into a negative light, as and that was degrading because, like you said, what he had on, what are you supposed to jog in? You know what I'm saying? And people go to formal affairs with no socks, so that wasn't nothing, out of the ordinary. And to describe his toenails, I think that was far-fetched. I think right then and there she knew they didn't have any evidence, uh, that was not a shadow of a doubt for them to have a mistrial or not to be found guilty. Um, were there any things in the trial that came up that you were just hearing for the first time? Because one of the things that I heard that wasn't necessary, that was not spoken in the news, was that Mr. Williams pushed him into a ditch. That was the first time that I heard about that.
Um, we had heard in the pre-trial hearings, prompting up to court, that had come up about William Roddy forcing Ahmaud off into the ditch. That was actually told in the pretrial hearing by GBI agent Dial when he gave the specifics from like the beginning to end on his narrative of what took place on that day. So that wasn't really new for me. Um, there wasn't really much that we didn't hear in the pretrial hearings that we heard in the courtroom. Um, I think what stuck out to me most is the way that um, the narrative was changed, as far as the stories that they gave to the police
Mhm.
officers at the scene, and the story that they gave an hour after in the interrogation room versus to when they got to trial the day that Travis testified. He pretty much changed his story on the stand, as if he didn't remember and things weren't clear, or he didn't know, and then he added some things, and it was just like, he knew. I'm sure he remembered. I mean, it was fresh on your mind an hour after it happened. So the story that you gave an hour after the incident happened, that's the story that they're going to stick with, because now it's been 20 months. You've
Mhm.
talked to your lawyers, you've had time to prep for trial, you've had time to be trained on what to say. So of
Mhm.
course we need to take the story that you initially gave in the beginning.
Yeah, and one of the things they said that was really weird was they said that they were trying to make it look like that Greg McMichaels had some kind of medical healing going on, that he just had hip surgery so he couldn't be as strong as he did to jump on the back of that truck and be prepared to shoot Ahmaud if his son didn't shoot him. So they were trying to, and then they also accused, they always want to accuse the African-American victim as the choices they made was for the reason that he was killed, because she mentioned, I think it was the wife, Miss Holt, mentioned that it was Ahmaud's choices that day that caused him to be shot, you know, like his choice to decide to jog in that area, you know, or go through the house. And one of the things that really bothered me was the fact that you had white people, young white people, teenagers of all ages go through that house, and nobody else was accused of taking anything of, but only this Black young man, you know, and that it was so hurtful, you know, and everybody could see that clearly. Do you think that and as the judge said, he didn't know that Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton was in the gallery unless Gall brought it to his attention. He was the only one that was looking hard at the gallery. Do you think that Judge Walmsley did a good job as judging the case?
I think Judge Walmsley was very fair. You can tell that he was not a judge that was just on the panel just to be there. He was engaged in what was going on. He made the proper objections when they needed to be made. He sustained the objections that didn't need to be made. He listened to the evidence. You can tell he was paying attention, because at times when there was an objection or when something was said, he could read back or say back what had just been heard and explain how he was hearing it from that side. So you can tell that he was actually engaged. He was paying attention, and that he was there to make the right decisions in the case of Ahmaud.
And when he couldn't give an answer or give a statement for what they were giving him, he would call for a break so he would have time to read over it and, you know, go over it before he gave an answer. And then at one point, he just looked like he was disgusted by all the mistrials or all the antics and all the slurs that were being said in the courtroom.
Right, he knew. He's been a judge for a long time. This is not new to him. This is not his first merry-go-round. As we all knew, Kevin Goff he's not as stupid as people were saying, and he's not what people were making him out to be. This is not his first rodeo. He was a public defender before he became an independent attorney. So he's been down this road many a times. And that was a part of his strategy, to be very strategic, to say certain things that he felt like would incite rioting or incite something that's going to be out of the ordinary, where it's going to take the distraction of the jurors or it's going to cause a commotion outside. And so when he got up and he made the statement about Black pastors, he knew that he was going to get a response. Now, whether he knew it was going to be the response that he got,
right,
he knew he was going to get a response. But not only did Black pastors show up, there were rabbis, there were pastors of every denomination on that courthouse grounds, to the point of where the other defense teams couldn't stay inside on their lunch. They came outside because they wanted to see what was going on. And they even said like they couldn't even jump into the motion with him when he filed for a mistrial about it, because those people that were outside, that was their First Amendment right, and they could do that as long as it wasn't causing a distraction to what was going on inside. So they didn't even join the motion for mistrial on that, because they knew that he had incited that behavior, and that's what he was looking for. And so he got the response that he was looking for. And he's very smart, because I don't know if anybody caught it, but on the day of his closing arguments, when he got up to present his closing arguments, he said, "When I leave here today and go home to whatever, St. Clair Avenue," he gave his address. He's very smart.
Yeah.
And he gave his address because that's the day that the Black Panthers were in town.
Yeah.
So if I give my address, these people will show up to my house. They will stand outside. They will cause all kind of ruckus on St. Simon's Island. They'll probably be arrested. And then I can walk in here in the morning. So they came to my house, they threatened me, they harassed me, and now I can file for a mistrial. but we were one step ahead of you because we got on live immediately to let people know, do not go to his house. Do not engage in that behavior, because he was looking for a reason, because they had no evidence. Their case was weak. It was weak because you knew on February the 11th, Travis and Greg knew when Officer whatever what's his name, Rash, came out to the scene and showed them the video of Ahmaud in the home. He also made it very clear that Mr. English had stated to him that Ahmaud had visited that home on numerous occasions, but he had never taken anything. He had never damaged anything. He had just wanted him to go and tell Ahmaud, find out who he was, and have him not come back to the home. That was it. Mr. English also stated the same thing when he did his deposition. He also stated that he never saw him take anything. So on February the 11th, 12 days before you guys murdered Ahmaud, you were aware that he had not committed any crime in that neighborhood, and you still took it upon yourself to hunt him down and kill him. So you deserve exactly what you got.
And they constantly, and they showed the video more than one time of Ahmaud in that house, and they kept wanting to say that he was plundering through the things, and he didn't touch anything, not one thing. And it was sad because his father had stated that Ahmaud wanted to build his parents a house, and all he was doing was looking at that house and going home and sketching things from that house. Because we all go to, I'm sure you have gone to a house under construction.
I went to that house when he was killed. After he was killed, I went to that same house.
And we do those things, and just to see what it's going to look like. One of the things that I didn't know was Detective Lowry, the lead detective. I think the prosecutor worked on him pretty good, because she made him actually say that he only wrote one paragraph, and the only paragraph that he wrote about was Greg McMichaels. They didn't impound either truck, and they didn't even search the truck, and they were allowed to leave the scene of the crime and not be arrested.
Well, Detective Larry was very, very untrustworthy from the beginning. Detective Larry was the one, after reviewing evidence, after watching the video, after coming up with all these things at the scene, he still took it upon himself, and he called Ahmaud's mother and told her the story that her son was involved in a burglary, and there was a fight over a firearm, and Ahmaud was killed. So after sitting at the scene, going through the evidence, before you even identified who he was by his fingerprints, you still called her and gave her whatever narrative that you wanted to give her, instead of giving her the truth.
I mean that, and if you make, it makes this city or the county, people living in the county, feel some kind of way to know that these police officers, do just literally lie and do these things, because I really think that they thought this was going to get swept underneath the rug and nobody would know about it. But it was that video. It was that video that saved the day. And I like the way that the prosecutor made that video one of the main witnesses to beam Ahmaud, since he couldn't be here physically. That was smart strategy also. So I know this, the prosecution was grand, weren't they? They were excellent. Miss Linda Dunaskowski, whenever I don't mean to tear up her name, but Miss Linda, whenever they objected to whatever she said, she had case files and everything, and she took her time and explained it to the judge why she felt as though she should ask them that question. And she just sat there patiently, turned to whatever defense was talking, and looked at the judge to see what answer the judge was going to give. But I loved her closing statement because when all of them swore in to testify, I didn't think Travis was going to be the one to testify. but he was so arrogant in his white privilege that when he got up on the stand and answered those questions, he just knew that he was, was making himself innocent to the crime of self-defense. You know what I'm saying? And when she asked him that question, did Ahmaud threaten him? All those no's, I was so proud of that. And she answered that, and that just gave him his guilt right there. What did you say about that?
Yeah, because I don't know if people were paying attention, but she was very strategic, especially when she was writing on the board. And I was also writing in court as well, because I was following, because she would say stuff to him and she would say, okay, so maybe. And so she would write the maybe down. And then, so you said he may have, and since she would write down there, so you said maybe, may, and like, so I knew that her strategy was, because those are considered assumptions. And she was lining it up for the end of the closing arguments. And then when he took the stand, I knew that she was going to railroad him right into where he needed to be, because she asked him several times during her closing arguments with him. She asked him several times the same exact questions. Did he ever threaten you? And he said, nope. Did he ever brandish a weapon at you? Nope. Did he have a knife? Nope. And so these, in my mind, I'm thinking, if you're standing here and you're pleading self-defense, at some point, you're going to say yes.
Yes.
But you said no to everything except, okay, so he was just running. Yes, he was just running.
Yeah.
So you
just
dug your own grave. That was your self-defense.
Yes. Just running, and it's so offensive that when they see a Black person running, they are actually said, the defense said, they either running to something or running from something. How did they figure that? You know what I'm saying? We see people jogging all the time across the causeway, 17 on the island or whatever. We don't think they're running from anywhere. They dress like they need to be dressed running,
What got me was when she said to him, well, when you pulled up beside him and you said you made some kind of contact with him and you said he took off running, she was like, don't you think that when he started running that you may have startled him? And he said, well, I've never startled anybody before when I pulled up beside him. And I'm thinking, well, how many people have you pulled up on jogging in the neighborhood?
Yes.
How many people have you possibly threatened that we don't know about in this neighborhood? So now it's like you're opening another door.
Yes.
For another conversation.
Yes.
Because, well, how many people? Who does that? Who just pulls up on people jogging through neighborhoods?
And the thought of carjacking was just asinine. I mean, really. And the defense kept beating at that idea that maybe that he was up against that truck trying to get inside of it. I'm like, really? But I'm just glad that we got the verdict that we got.
Absolutely.
It was, do you think that the jury was too short to get to that end? Took too long? How do you think they did? Because I remember them saying that they watched that video, am I correct, 3 times before they came each to a conclusion?
And I think what they were stuck on a lot was when they watched each video 3 times each, I think a lot of it was stuck with how to charge William Roddy. And then there was another part where, when did Greg McMichael, at what point did Greg McMichael try to stop Travis from making a bad decision? And these were thoughts that were going through my head. And so when they played the video, they kind of stopped it like right after he yelled Travis, but it was too late because the first shot had went off. It already shot, so it was like, you didn't try to stop him before Ahmaud was shot, while you were on the phone with the police. And then William Roddy's, I think, was pretty stuck on which murder and how do we charge him with murder, because malice, of course, you see Greg wasn't charged with malice either, but malice, because they didn't actually pull the trigger.
Right.
But if they were going to charge William Roddy with false imprisonment, that false imprisonment and that felony murder had to go together. And because the felony murder had to go there, because false imprisonment was the reason Ahmaud couldn't leave the neighborhood. So if your truck wouldn't have blocked him in, he would have been able to leave. You were the reason that his death was caused because he couldn't get out.
Yeah, and you clearly saw in the video the stop sign was right there. They had the nerve to say he could have gotten out, but y'all blocked that way for him to get out. He had to go around, you know.
Because if you look at the video, Ahmaud had turned around on the video that William Roddy had. He had turned around. He was going to go the other way, but he couldn't go the other way because you were coming in. So he had to turn around and go back the other way.
And you would think how nervous he was, because like Miss Linda asked him, when Ahmaud turned that right, you know, he was trying to get away from you. So why didn't you go straight? You backed up your vehicle and you went the same way he went. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just thinking through my mind just how he was just so scared and didn't know what to do at that last minute. And then when he looked behind him, there was a truck. And when he looked in front of him, there was a truck. And he didn't mean to go to the left because he didn't know Travis was going to get out. You know what I'm saying? And so, but the other thing that is concerning is that whole neighborhood has guns.
That's exactly what I said. Everybody that went to check on the house is armed.
Yeah.
Everybody.
So all of y'all came armed, and this young man is not armed at all. What does he have? Nothing but his feet and him.
And I really felt like they were a mob. They all strategized together, and at some point, somebody at some point was going to kill Ahmaud.
Because they seem, and the thing about it is, they were poking in somebody else's business, because if Mr. English said nothing was stolen, why are you still worrying about this man's house? And he's not worrying about it. He's the one building it. You in your own private home, you know? So there's so many questions that, just like Travis is 35 years old, you couldn't tell your dad when your dad said, son, go get the gun. You couldn't say, Dad, why? I mean, that's like manipulation, like a friend telling a friend to do something that he wouldn't do. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that he should have, I don't know if he did get convicted for that or not, but I think he was the one that started that whole scenario by telling his son to get the gun. And I think he should have been charged with malice as if he pulled the trigger, because his son wasn't thinking about that. His son was in the house minding his business. You know, and as a dutiful son, he did what his dad told him. And I'm sure he has reservations about his father right now, you know.
Yeah, because now he's left not being able to be a father to his own son, because his son was in the house. You were sitting there with your son, enjoying a Sunday afternoon like normal people should be doing.
Exactly.
And you allowed your dad to initiate you to insert yourself in a situation, and now you won't see your son anymore. So your dad has really caused hurt in so many ways in your entire family, because now the grandson will be without a grandfather and his father. And now you're in jail with your father, you know, like, so nobody wins.
And then he's going to mention that he thought about his son when Ahmaud grabbed the rifle. You should have thought about your son when you picked up that rifle, that shotgun in the house. You should have been thinking about your son then.
I would have never left my son.
So now that it's over, what is next for Miss Thea?
Well, so much. Well, we still have February to go. Of course, the federal hate crime charges. That's why you didn't hear a lot about, they didn't harbor so much about race, and they didn't harbor so much on it. They didn't harp on it because, of course, that will be for federal court in February. As for me, um, working with other families who are facing similar injustices, families who have been grieving for quite some time now, about relatives and loved ones who have not received justice. Cases like Kelsey Rayner down in Baxley, who was left on the jail cell floor for 7 hours, who died of sepsis, throwing up his bowels because they would not take him to the hospital to receive any aid after being told by the judge to release him so he could go, or to take him to the hospital, but they decided to take him back to jail versus taking him to the hospital. So he lay on the floor for 7 hours and nobody rendered any aid to him, and he died on the jail cell floor.
So they didn't do what the judge asked them to do. They didn't do
Right,
their job.
right. Because he asked in court to be let out or something because he needed to go get some help. And so they were ordered to take Mr. Rayner to the hospital, and they did not take him to the hospital. They took him back to jail, and he suffered for 7 hours. And he laid on the floor in a jail cell, and he died. And so there has been no justice served. He was up under the jurisdiction, of course, of our favorite Jackie Johnson, um, who is also waiting. She's been indicted, and we're hoping that God hears our prayers so that she can find a seat at a prison as well for her actions. She's not only caused these family that family to her or our family to her. There's so many families that we've learned of that we're working with to assist them in their fight for justice. I was just in Douglas, Georgia on Saturday with the family of Pernell Harris, who
Can you tell
was
me a little bit about that? I've seen
Mr. Harris. There was a call to his home. There was an argument going on between him and his girlfriend. Um, and they were just trying to really pretty much diffuse the situation. And things escalated. The police, you could see in the video, they were pulling his hair. They were just really being very rough. But when Mr. Harris left his home, um, he looked okay. So we're not sure what happened from the driveway of his home to the jailhouse. But Mr. Harris was taken to the hospital, and Mr. Harris was tased in his forehead, in his hands, on his body in different areas. To now he's in a vegetative state.
Oh my.
Excessive use of force with the tasers. And so Mr. Harris is laying in a hospital bed. He's coming along now. It was very scary at first. I thought they were going to lose him, but he is in a vegetative state. It's very sad to see somebody go from being just normal, and then in 24 hours, you don't even recognize them.
How old is Mr. Harris?
I don't want to lie to you. I have all of his stuff written down, being that I've been now inserted into helping. We have the case where we're assisting with Mark Wilson down in Statesboro, his self-defense case, where he's been in jail over 500 and something days, no bond, no nothing. The judge has just been very, very not helpful in the situation with Mr. Mark, who has witnesses that stated that he was trying to get away from these people. The people in the truck also said that they were drinking and what they had done, and one of the people in that truck was shot and killed because of self-defense.
Is that the case about the young black guy that was dating the white girl? Is that
Yes,
that case? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And then there is a young man who has been missing now for over a year, down in Valdosta. The police won't help the mom. They won't assist her with anything. They're giving her a hard time. He's been missing for over a year. She has so much stuff that she's been going through justify her son, and she feels like she's being penalized because of her son being a part of the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why personally she feels like, they don't want to help her
Mm-hmm.
because of that, which that should not play a factor in who he chose to be. That's his life.
Mm-hmm.
He's missing, so let's find him.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just, Miss Pam, I could sit on here all night and I could go
I
on
know.
and on and on.
I
There are
know.
just so
Many.
many people that are hurting right now as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the injustices that we face. And it's so unfortunate that we have to keep coming up against this. But the only way to deal with it is to deal with it head on.
Mm-hmm.
And, we as people have been silenced for so long. And I think it's a lot out of fear, being afraid to talk or afraid, or feel like you're snitching when you insert yourself or when you see something that's not right, instead of saying something or being vocal about it or reporting it to the proper authorities, we silence ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We come up with this no snitch or stitches get stitches, and we come
Mm-hmm.
up with all these bogus
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
things and cliches, and
Mm-hmm.
and families are hurting,
Mm-hmm.
but then they're not considered snitches when something happens in your family and you want someone to talk.
Right. Just like Kendrick Johnson. Oh, just like Kendrick Johnson.
Yes, and KJ, I was gonna say him next. We have watched Miss Jackie. She's been a phenomenal, um, I would say, role model as a mother in fighting for justice for her son.
Mm-hmm.
Since the day that Kendra was killed, Miss Jackie has pushed. She's not giving up. She
Mm-hmm.
keeps his name alive.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing the screenings of his story
Yes.
because we know there was no way that you can kill yourself and roll yourself up in a mat and stand yourself upright in a corner
Yeah. Right.
of a gym
But we.
and some of your organs to be missing. Now, I ain't the smartest person in the crayon box, but I ain't never heard of that being done. I just don't know how one person can do all that to themselves and then kill themselves.
Well, when they did the looked at when the FBI came down or the GBI came down and did the investigation of that tape, they said that tape was altered. It's you can see him going in the gym, but you never see him coming out of the gym. And Jennifer Lewis, actress Jennifer Lewis, they're doing a movie or documentary out soon. Well, I think it's already been on Netflix about that story. And I just hope that family, all the families, find some closure to what happened to their loved ones. You got Sandra Bland, you got Breonna Taylor, you have all these young Black people.
And
And
in Atlanta, you have Jamarion Robinson, his mom.
yes,
I want to say her fight was like 5 years, where they shot her son like 76 times.
yes, yes.
And she just received, like a couple weeks ago, she finally, after all these years of fighting, indictment on the officers who killed her son. Who can shoot somebody that many
76,
times?
76 times.
I just I don't understand for the life of me. Like, use of excessive force. When is that?
Overkill. I mean, you were
And then you
that
have Dante
angry.
right now. We're listening to his trial with the officer who claimed she accidentally shot him with her gun, thinking it was her
It's a
taser.
taser. Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
put your uniform on for the last X amount of years the same way. Your taser always goes on the same side, and your gun always goes on your strongest side. So you know that. This
Mm-hmm.
is not your first time. You didn't just get charged. You're not a rookie. You've been doing this.
But if you notice when these officers do this, that they use these innuendos when they're talking to the police or whatever, or when they're in the act of doing something, they already are speaking like they're doing it in self-defense already. Did you see any similarities between the Trayvon Martin trial and the Ahmaud Arbery trial. Some people were saying there were similarities to those two cases.
Well, I'm not going to say many similarities other than this could have been a cover up, like they did with Trayvon. I mean, because there was, I mean, I'm not understood to this day. I don't understand how you mistake Skittles for a gun.
Right.
I still haven't understood that.
And the
And so
only,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
So I just they're just I mean, I can't really say because I can't say that George haunted Trayvon down, um, because we saw what happened with the mob. He was haunted, but they were both young Black men who lost their lives, who didn't get an opportunity to have a future, to be a husband, to be this phenomenal uncle that Ahmaud I knew he was going to be because he took care of his nephews. You know, they their lives were ripped from them. So in that case, yes, you can compare it that way, but the way the manhunt happened with Ahmaud, it's really not too many similarities there.
No, the way it had, right, those two is not similar, but the only similarity I seen was they both cried that they were recent burglars in the area and they figured they were the suspect. That was the only similarity to me. Yes.
Right.
Well, thank you for this pre-trial update, Ms. Brooks. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Did everything
Okay.
was great. You know, after the verdict, that was more reason to be thankful.
Oh,
Um,
most definitely.
I mean, it was like so much relief because 20 months is a long time
Mm-hmm.
to fight, to endure, to listen to the naysayers, to hear from the opposing sides and all the negative stuff that comes. It's a lot of enduring.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to endure that because you don't want to jeopardize what you've worked so hard for.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that verdict was read, that was the first thing that came out. A lot of people's mouths in that room was thank God.
Mm-hmm.
So
We
we
heard
had so much to be thankful for.
we heard Marcus yell out, and the judge probably said, "I'm tired. You have to let him go. It was too loud." But what was exciting was when he asked each individual jury, "Is this your verdict?" And they both all said yes, because all we needed was one to throw the whole thing off, and it was perfect. It was perfect. And I tell you, but I say this to say this, that when they say, sometimes we never know where your angels are. You know what I'm saying? God says you might be serving an angel. And this is the first time in history that 11 white people, found officers or other human beings guilty of killing an African American. And I think it was so awesome. It happened in our city. And I'm proud of them. I hope to catch up with them. I know sooner or later that one of them or something is going to the newspaper when all of this kind of sides down next year. But what do you feel the aftermath of Brunswick, Georgia will be after this verdict? Do you think that, I'm sure some people understand our cry now after all of these years, and I know everybody is not going to have a different attitude, but in all, how do you think that the environment in Brunswick is going to be after this?
Right now, I think that this has drawn our community closer. Even in the beginning with the people who were naysayers who felt like um, that Ahmad was in the wrong. And I think after sitting and following the trial,
Mhm.
getting a better understanding of what happened that day versus the narrative that our local newspaper put out, because in the beginning it was just a narrative to make Ahmad be this person and just assassinate his character, to the point of where you had the locals like, well, who's this monster? Maybe he shouldn't have been in the neighborhood. It's a terrible person, because that's the narrative that they were writing in our
Mhm.
newspapers. And so when people read things, they think about those things.
Mhm.
And so, well, if he was this kind of person and he did these kind of things, and maybe he should be, and it was given the wrong perception of what really, really happened that day. And
Mhm.
now, once that they've been able to follow the story
Mhm.
and keep up with the story, and then May 5th happened with the video, and then we went through court now, and you've been able to watch it firsthand because it was public. So you
Mhm.
could see firsthand all the evidence. The
Mhm.
medical examiner, day 8, the
Mhm.
body pictures of Ahmaud, how those bullets tore his body up, how he didn't even stand a chance. Even the first bullet through the hand that went through his torso could
Mhm.
have been the bullet that they said could have killed him first, because he lost so much blood. So after you're able to sit there and listen to the people who have been in the field of work, who have been now doing this for a long time and been declared experts in their job, you have no other reason but to know that this was a modern day lynching. It's
Mhm.
still happening, and we can't allow these things to go on in our community. And so I think that they've changed their minds. A lot of their hearts have changed. Now, of course,
Not
everybody's
everybody.
not going to be on the same page.
Mhm.
There's still going to be one or two that don't believe the way we do. There's
Mhm.
still going to be those who think that he deserves what he got. And
Mhm.
there's still those, but those are the ones that we have to pray without ceasing for.
Mhm.
We have to continue to pray for their hearts to change, and continue to pray that nothing like this ever happens to their loved one. And like I tell everybody that I sit and talk to, that the narrative will change when the caskets start rolling through their neighborhoods like they're rolling through ours.
Mhm. And what gets me is in 2021, their narrative is still, we don't know you from this neighborhood. Like we just can't walk through a neighborhood because we don't live there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they move to places and say that they moved to this place. Some people say they moved to this area because they didn't think crime would happen. And then when crime happens, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I never thought it would happen here. This is why I moved here. But we're not immune to any of these things. I see people walking in my neighborhood. I mean, if I'm going in my house or coming out, I'll check to see if I knows them, but it's not my business to stop them. And for them to be so arrogant because Ahmaud didn't want to stop, because when they yelled at him and said, stop, but when they said they were going to shoot, if you don't stop, we're going to shoot your effing head off, I'd have ran too. Why would you want to stop with somebody approaching you like that? What made you so arrogant that made you mad because he didn't want to stop and talk to you, you know? And yes, and like you said, we have to change that narrative. And I just hope that, I really think that this race conversation is not swept under the rug anymore, that it can be talked about like we're talking about it now, and have a conversation, because it's an understanding. There's an understanding, because there's still people that live in other parts of the United States that have not seen Black people. You know what I'm saying? Have never lived around them. And the only thing that they know about us is what they hear and what they see and what other people tell them. They have not experienced it for themselves. And so my hat is off to you. You worked diligently, you worked hard on this case. And I think this is another one of your calling. So God be with you, and thank you so much for coming on. And anytime you want to come on again, just give me a ring, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you for having me, Miss Pam.
You welcome, baby. You ready for the holidays? You ready for
I
Christmas?
am. I am.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing Christmas different in my house this year. I have to teach my children that it's not always about receiving.
Mm-hmm.
That giving should be present. And I had to remind them and my daughter this year that, I'm not sure if I even elaborate enough on you guys the meaning of Christmas and what it happened and what it meant. But Christ didn't take gifts to the people.
Mm-hmm.
They bought gifts to Jesus when he was born.
Mm-hmm.
So this year, Santa's not bringing gifts to you. You're going to take gifts to other people
Mm-hmm.
because you have to know that it's better to give than receive. And just to learn, because Christmas is every day in this house. These kids get everything. So they don't have to have a special day to get something. There's nothing else to buy. I mean, they have everything. So there's nothing else to buy. I mean, you got a bicycle, you got cars to ride around in, you got basketball, everything. There's nothing else to buy. So we can take some of this stuff and wrap it up and give it to somebody else because y'all ain't even playing with it.
Right.
So
That's what I used to do. That's what I used to do. I mean, they were still in good shape and everything like that. And if you got too big to play with it, you wrap it up or you give it away, and you don't wrap it up or you give it away, but give it to somebody else, because they said one man's trash is another one's treasure.
That's right.
You know, and so yeah, but they might still just deserve one present. They've been good all year long. You've been out there doing what you do for the people, so you know, just one little thing in their stocking or something.
They got a whole cruise coming up. No, man. A whole cruise. 7 whole days of me and them.
Okay, okay.
OMG.
Yes. Well, you take care, and until the next time, you be blessed.
Yes, ma'am. You too. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Have a blessed
Bye-bye.
evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.